Shane Adler gripped his 6-year-old son's hand tighter as they crossed the busy street, the little boy's worn sneakers flapping against the pavement. "Come on, Wes. We've got 5 minutes before the library closes, and your book's already overdue." "But I want to read it again," Wesley whined, dragging his feet beneath the too big hoodie that once belonged to Shane. Shane sighed, not because of the whining, he was used to that, but because the last thing he needed was another late fee. He was already behind on rent, and his shift at the auto shop barely covered groceries. Still, he crouched down, brushing Wes's shaggy brown hair from his eyes. "You read it again tonight, all right? Then we bring it back tomorrow. Deal?" Wes nodded, clutching the book in his arms like it was made of gold. They stepped into the library just as the glass doors started to slide shut. Shane exhaled in relief, stepping aside to let Wes run to the return bin. That's when he saw her. She was standing near the children's area, her hands shaking as she flipped through the picture books with frantic eyes. Her coat was expensive tan wool, clearly tailored, and her heels didn't belong on the scuffed library floor. Her blonde hair was twisted into a low bun, but strands had fallen loose, framing her face in a way that made her look lost and scared. Shane didn't think. He just walked over. "You okay?" he asked, voice low but steady. The woman turned to him, eyes wide. "Have you seen a little girl? She's 4, brown curly hair, wearing a yellow dress with sunflowers. I was looking at a book and turned for 2 seconds, and she was gone." Shane's stomach dropped. He looked around, scanning the aisles. "What's her name?" "Willow," she said, her voice catching. "Willow Grace. You stay here in case she comes back. I'll help look." "I thank you," she whispered, tears threatening to spill. He nodded and turned, calling over his shoulder, "Wes, stay close to Miss Grace, all right?" Wes, ever the rule follower, nodded and sat on the carpet next to the woman, hugging his book. Shane moved fast, checking each aisle, calling the girl's name in a calm, friendly tone. He ducked into the restroom, peeked behind shelves, asked the staff. Nothing. 10 minutes later, he spotted a flash of yellow near the back exit. "Willow," he called. The little girl turned, lip trembling. "I was looking for a puppy book." Shane knelt. "Hey, your mom's worried sick. Come on, let's go back." Willow nodded, slipping her small hand into his. When they returned to the front, the woman Juliet, he assumed, from her daughter's last name, let out a broken gasp and dropped to her knees, hugging Willow tight. "I told you not to wander, baby. You scared me." "I'm sorry, Mama," the girl mumbled into her shoulder. Juliet looked up at Shane, her eyes shining. "You found her. Thank you." He gave her a faint smile. "No problem. I've had a few runaways myself." Wes grinned. "I only did it once." Juliet laughed softly, wiping her face. "I'm Juliet Granger." Shane Adler. They shook hands, hers soft and cold, his rough and grease-stained. "I don't know how to thank you," she said. "Don't worry about it." "No, really. You saved me. Let me take you and your son to dinner. Please." Shane hesitated. He didn't like pity, and he definitely didn't belong in the kind of places women like her probably ate at. But Wes's stomach growled audibly, and Juliet smiled. "There's a diner around the corner. It's kid-friendly," she said gently, like she already knew what he was thinking. He rubbed the back of his neck. "All right. But only if we split the bill." Juliet didn't argue, but something in her eyes said she wouldn't let that happen. They walked to the diner, Willow holding Juliet's hand while Wes talked her ear off about his favorite books. Shane kept stealing glances at Juliet. She was beautiful, but it wasn't just that. There was something real about her, vulnerable but strong. The way she dropped everything to search for her child, the way she kept one hand on Willow's back the whole time at the table, he saw himself in her. A parent doing their best in a world that didn't make it easy. Over grilled cheese and fries, they talked. Juliet asked about Wes's school, and Shane asked if she lived nearby. Just moved to the city from Boston, she said. Trying to get a fresh start. He nodded.
Same.
Got custody of Wes 6 months ago. Been figuring things out. Her expression softened. You're a good dad. He shrugged, embarrassed. I try. When the check came, Juliet had already paid. Shane opened his mouth to argue, but she held up a hand. Consider it a thank you. Really? He sighed.
Fine.
But I owe you next time. Juliet smiled. Next time? He blinked. I mean, if you and Willow ever want to hang out again. No pressure. She looked down, cheeks pink. I'd like that. As they walked out, the kids raced ahead. Juliet turned to him, her voice low. I'm not used to people helping me. Most assume I have everything under control. Well, I don't assume anything, Shane said, holding the door for her. She looked up at him, her eyes warm. That's nice. Really nice. They stood there for a second too long. Then Wes called for him, and the moment passed. But as they said goodbye, Juliet touched his arm lightly. Thank you again, Shane. You didn't even know me, and you showed up. He looked at her, something stirring in his chest he hadn't felt in years. You're welcome, Juliet. He walked home with Wes on his shoulders, a full stomach and something new inside him.
Hope.
3 days passed before Shane saw Juliet again. It was a Thursday afternoon, and he was elbow-deep in the hood of a rusted-out Buick at the shop, sweat soaking through the collar of his work shirt. Oil smeared across his forearm as he tightened the last bolt and shut the hood with a solid thud. Adler, his boss, called from the office doorway, waving a clipboard. There's someone asking for you out front. Said it's not about a repair. Shane wiped his hands on a rag, brow furrowed. He hadn't given out the shop's address to anyone new. He tugged off his gloves and walked through the garage, the scent of rubber and gasoline clinging to the air. She stood just outside the glass door, her back to him. Juliet. This time, she wasn't wearing heels or a tailored coat. She had on a simple navy blouse and jeans, her hair pulled into a loose knot at the nape of her neck. But there was no mistaking her. She turned just as he stepped outside. I hope it's okay I came by, she said, her voice softer than he remembered. Shane nodded, slightly thrown. Yeah, of course. Everything all right? She held up a small paper bag. Wes mentioned he liked lemon scones. There's this bakery near my building that makes really good ones. Thought I'd drop some off. He blinked. That's thoughtful. You didn't have to. I know. I wanted to. He took the bag and gestured toward the bench near the edge of the parking lot. You have time to sit? She hesitated, then nodded. Willow's at a play date with a neighbor. I've got an hour. They sat, the hum of traffic and the occasional hiss of air compressors drifting from the shop behind them. Juliet tucked a strand of hair behind her ear and glanced at him. This place suits you. Shane gave a half laugh. You mean the grime and the busted radiators? I mean the way you look like you know exactly what you're doing. That's rare. He looked at her, then really looked. There was something different in her eyes today. Less guarded. Still cautious, but curious. Most people don't show up at a guy's job with pastries, he said. Juliet leaned back slightly. Most guys don't find missing children and refuse free dinner. He exhaled through his nose, amusement flickering. So, this is payback? This is me saying I enjoyed talking with you. And maybe hoping you did too. He studied her face, searching for the catch. But she looked completely honest. I did, he said finally. Juliet glanced toward the shop. Do you own this place? He snorted. God, no. I just rent here. Been trying to save up to maybe open something of my own one day, but it's slow going. She nodded slowly, saving for something better. I get that. He tilted his head. What about you? You said you just moved here. What brings someone like you to a place like this? She hesitated. I needed distance. From noise, from decisions I regret. Starting over seemed easier in a city where no one expected anything from me. Shane didn't push, though he was tempted to. She was clearly holding back something big, but he knew enough about pride to recognize it when he saw it. Wes really liked Willow, he said instead. He asked if he could draw her a picture. Juliet brightened instantly. She'd love that. She's been asking when she can see him again. Well, maybe they could hang out at the park this weekend. I don't have work on Sundays. Juliet smiled, genuine and soft. That would be really nice. They sat in silence for a beat, the kind that felt unhurried, not awkward. I've got a question, Shane said after a moment. You don't seem like someone who has a lot of time to spare. Why are you making time for me? Juliet didn't look away. Because I don't meet people who feel safe often. And you didn't ask me for anything. You just showed up when I needed someone. He nodded once, slowly. Fair enough. I'd like to return the favor, she added. He raised an eyebrow. How so? I know you're proud, she said carefully. But if there's ever something you need help with, Wes, or anything, I'd rather you ask than pretend you've got it all under control. Shane's jaw tightened slightly. And why would you think I don't? Juliet didn't flinch. Because I'm good at spotting people who are hanging on by their fingernails. And because I've been there, too. He didn't respond right away, unsure whether to be offended or grateful. Eventually, he nodded just once. Thanks, he said. She stood then, brushing invisible crumbs from her jeans. I should go.
But
Sunday? The park. Yeah, he said. We'll be there. As she walked away, Shane watched her go, the paper bag still warm in his hand. Back inside the shop, his boss gave him a look over the top of his glasses. Friend of yours? Shane didn't answer. Not really. Not yet. But maybe. Maybe. That night, Wes sat at the kitchen table, crayons scattered around him as he carefully colored in a picture of a girl with curly hair holding a red balloon. Does Willow like balloons? He asked. Guess we'll find out, Shane said, setting a plate of scrambled eggs in front of him. Wes beamed. I think she's gonna love it. Shane watched his son for a moment, then moved to the sink, the hum of the faucet masking the sudden rush of thoughts. He had no idea who Juliet Granger really was beneath the quiet smiles and lemon scones, but something told him he was about to find out. It was barely past noon on Sunday when Shane and Wes arrived at the park, a paper bag in hand carrying the drawing, a peanut butter sandwich, and a slightly bruised apple. Wes ran ahead toward the playground, the early spring breeze tugging at the back of his shirt. Shane followed slowly, hands shoved in his jacket pockets, eyes scanning the tree-lined paths. Juliet was already there. She sat on a bench beneath a willow tree, her legs crossed at the ankle, a book resting in her lap unopened. Willow stood beside her, twisting a daisy chain between her fingers. When she saw Wes, she lit up and ran toward him. The two children collided in an excited blur and took off toward the swings. Juliet rose and offered Shane a tentative smile. You weren't kidding. He really did draw her something. He handed her the folded paper. He's been asking about it all week. She opened it carefully and studied the crayon drawing. That balloon is taller than the trees. I love it. He said it had to float up high enough for her to find if she ever got lost again, Shane said, watching Wes push Willow on the swing. Juliet folded the paper again, slower this time. He's thoughtful, like his father. They sat on the bench, a comfortable quiet settling between them as the kids played. The sun filtered through the branches overhead, casting speckled light across Juliet's lap. I've been thinking about something, she said eventually, her eyes still on the children. You said you wanted to open your own garage. Shane shifted.
Yeah.
What's stopping you? He exhaled.
Money. Time.
The fact that I can't afford to gamble and lose when I've got a kid depending on me. Juliet nodded, then turned to face him. What if someone offered to back you? No strings. Just someone who believes you'd make a business work. He frowned. That someone being you? She looked down at her hands. I didn't mean to hide anything. When I moved here, I didn't want to be seen as the woman with the safety net. I wanted to know if I could stand on my own. But I'm not going to pretend anymore. Shane leaned forward, elbows on his knees. So you're rich. I manage a real estate trust, she said. My grandfather started it before I was born. It's been part of my life, whether I wanted it or not. He let that settle. Why tell me now? Because I don't want this whatever it is between us to be built on half-truths. And because I don't think you'd ever ask me for anything, even if you needed it. You're right, he said. I wouldn't. Juliet didn't flinch. That's what makes me want to offer. You didn't ask. And you showed up when I needed help without knowing who I was. I don't forget that. Shane looked at her, really looked. There was no arrogance in her voice, no trace of manipulation. Just honesty and something else, something unspoken. I've spent years trying to prove I could do it on my own. I still want to. But I'm trying to learn not to push away people who want to help for the right reasons. Shane rubbed his jaw. I've never taken a handout. Not once. It wouldn't be a handout. It would be a partnership. Or a loan. Or whatever makes you comfortable. I just didn't want to keep it from you any longer. He didn't answer right away. The wind picked up, and the chains on the swing set clinked like wind chimes. Wes was now showing Willow how to jump off mid-swing. She fell, rolled, then laughed, hands covered in grass stains.
Shane stood.
I need time to think about it. Of course, she replied, rising beside him. But thank you for telling me. Juliet nodded, her shoulders slightly tenser now. I wasn't sure how you'd take it. He glanced at her. I'm not sure how I take things like this either. But I'm not walking away. She looked up, her lips parting slightly. You're not. No, he said. I just need to figure out how to stop feeling like I'm not enough. They stood there in silence, close but not touching, watching their kids pick dandelions and race toward the jungle gym. Later, as they packed up to leave, Juliet hesitated before getting Willow into her car seat. There's one more thing, she said, her voice quiet. Shane paused beside his truck, arms full of Wes's jacket and the half-eaten apple. Juliet met his gaze. Willow's father isn't in the picture. He never wanted to be. I thought he'd change when she was born. He didn't. Shane nodded once, slowly. I know what that feels like. Juliet looked relieved. I just wanted you to hear it from me before anything between us gets more complicated. Complicated isn't always bad, he said, tossing the apple into the bin beside the lot. You're handling this better than I expected, she admitted, fastening Willow's buckle. Probably because I've been walking around expecting the other shoe to drop since I was 20, he said. Juliet smiled faintly, then closed the car door. Shane leaned on the truck door as Wes climbed into the front seat. So, this partnership you were talking about, what would it look like? Her eyes lit up. Whatever you want it to. I'm not agreeing to anything, but maybe we could talk about it. Over dinner. She tilted her head. Are you asking me out? Yeah, he said. I guess I am. Juliet held his gaze. Then yes, I'd like that. As she pulled out of the lot, Shane watched her taillights disappear down the road, the sky turning rose gold behind the trees. Wes tugged on his sleeve.
Dad.
Yeah. Can Willow come to my birthday? Shane looked down at him, heart full in a way it hadn't been in a long time. Yeah, bud. I think she'll be there. The restaurant Juliet picked was tucked into the corner of a quiet street near the river. Its entrance was modest, no gold lettering, no valet, no velvet ropes, but when Shane stepped inside, the scent of roasted garlic and wood-fired herbs hit him like a warm memory. The lighting was low, the walls brick, and the tables spaced wide enough that no one had to raise their voice.
It wasn't flashy.
It was intentional. Juliet stood near the back, her coat already off, a glass of water in her hand. She was wearing a slate blue blouse and her hair was down, falling over her shoulders in soft waves. It was the most relaxed he'd ever seen her. "You found it," she said as he approached. He pulled out the chair across from her. "Wasn't sure what to wear. Figured my cleanest button-up would do." She smiled. "You look right." They sat, and the server brought menus, but neither of them opened them. The silence that followed wasn't awkward, it was expectant. Shane leaned forward. "So, about that partnership." Juliet nodded slowly. "I've been thinking about it too. And I want to make sure it's on your terms. If we do this, I don't want anything that feels like control." He tilted his head. "If I say no, you'll walk away from the idea?" "If you say no, I'll still be sitting here," she said. "Still interested in dinner." That disarmed him more than any offer could have. He exhaled. "I've been going over numbers. I've got a rough business plan. It's not polished, but it's solid." "I'd love to see it," she said. "When you're ready." He tapped the menu, but didn't open it. "You ever think about starting something?" Away from the trust. She ran her finger along the rim of her glass. "I used to want to open a bookstore. Somewhere quiet, with a children's corner and fresh coffee. But I convinced myself it was unrealistic." "Sounds like something worth circling back to," he said. Her gaze held his. "Maybe I will." The server returned, and they ordered. He picked the roasted chicken with potatoes. She went for the saffron pasta. When the food arrived, Juliet paused with her fork halfway to her mouth. "I've been thinking about what you said. About not feeling like enough." He shifted in his seat, uncertain. "I know that feeling," she continued. "For me, it's not about money, it's about whether I'm capable of being someone's center. Not just for Willow, but for someone who could walk away if I fail." Shane looked up at her. "You ever think maybe none of us ever feel ready? We just try anyway." "I do now," she said. The meal passed in a rhythm neither of them rushed. When dessert came, a shared plate of lemon tart, Juliet reached across the table. "I know this started with a lost child in a library," she said. He took her hand, calloused fingers closing around hers. "It started way before that. We just didn't know it." As they stepped outside, the night was cold, but not biting. Juliet's driver wasn't waiting, she'd taken a car and told it to leave. Shane walked her to the corner. "I've never dated anyone my daughter's attached to," she said. "I've never dated someone who makes me think about things 10 years down the line." She hesitated. "Do you?" He nodded.
Yeah. I do.
Juliet tucked her hands into her coat. "Then maybe I should tell you something." He waited. "My grandfather left me controlling interest in the trust," she said. "It's not just money, it's influence. And it comes with people who expect me to live a certain way, date a certain kind of man, marry someone who can keep up." Shane's jaw clenched, but he didn't look away. "I don't care what they expect," she finished. "But I need you to know what you're in for, if this keeps going." He stepped closer. "I don't care if they expect you to marry a man with a castle and a title. I fix engines and raise my son. That's not going to change." "If that's not enough for them, it's more than enough for me," she said. He reached up, brushing a strand of hair from her cheek. "Then we're fine." She leaned in, just enough for her breath to catch against his collar. "Can I kiss you?" He didn't answer. He just did. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't hesitant. It was the kind of kiss that settled everything that had been uncertain. Later, when they parted, Juliet looked at him and said, "Come by tomorrow.
I want you to show me your plan."
I'll bring the coffee." He nodded. "And Shane?" "Yeah, don't hold back." "Not with me." He watched her walk away, her silhouette disappearing into the dark. When he got back to the apartment, Wes was asleep on the couch, a blanket tangled around his legs. Shane bent down, kissed his forehead, and whispered, "She's not like anyone else, kid." The next morning, he was already up when Juliet arrived. She brought 2 cups of coffee and a pad of blank paper. He spread his notes across the kitchen table, and she pulled her chair beside him instead of across. They worked for hours, elbows brushing, ideas bouncing. By the time the sun dipped behind the buildings outside, a plan had formed. Juliet reached for her coat. This is going to be something real. I can feel it. Shane walked her to the door. So can I. Weeks passed. The papers were signed. The lease secured. His garage opened under the name Adler and Company. Juliet kept her name off the documents, just the way he'd asked. But she was there every step of the way. The kids became inseparable. Wes taught Willow how to ride a bike. Willow taught Wes how to braid daisy crowns. One evening, after closing up the garage, Shane found Juliet waiting outside beside her car. She didn't say anything at first, just held out a key. "What's this?" he asked. She smiled. "The bookstore. I bought the building." He stared at her. "You said to circle back," she said. "So I did." He pulled her into a kiss before she could say anything else. The grand opening of Adler and Company was standing room only. Juliet stood by his side in a simple black dress, holding Willow's hand. Shane had Wes on his hip, both of them grinning. As the crowd clapped and the ribbon was cut, Juliet turned to him. "You ever think," she said, "that everything had to fall apart first so it could come together like this?" He looked at her, then around them the shop, the kids, the life that hadn't existed just months ago.
"No," he said.
"But I do now." They kissed as camera flashes went off, as laughter filled the air, as two kids chased each other between rows of parked cars. And for the first time in a long time, nothing was missing. Nothing at all. The scent of cedar and fresh paint still lingered in the air, even weeks after Adler and Company had officially launched. Shane stood near the bay doors, wiping grease from his hands as Juliet entered the garage, holding a folder in one hand and a coffee in the other. A navy scarf was wrapped around her neck, and the wind had pinked her cheeks. "I brought the final vendor contracts," she said, handing him the folder. "And I figured you probably skipped lunch again." He raised an eyebrow. "You're not wrong. But I thought you had meetings today." "I pushed them," Juliet replied, brushing a stray hair behind her ear. "It can wait." Shane leaned his shoulder against the wall. "You never used to push meetings." Juliet tilted her head. "I never used to have a reason to." The moment hung between them, warm despite the chill drifting in from the open bay. Then the office door creaked, and Wes poked his head out. "Dad, Willow's trying to use the tire pressure gauge as a spaceship." Shane called back, "Tell her gravity still applies in the waiting area." Wes disappeared with a laugh. Juliet chuckled. "They're going to take over the world one day." Shane stepped closer. "Let's just hope they don't start with my air compressor." Juliet wrapped her arms around herself. "You know, the bookstore's coming along faster than I expected. The shelves are being installed next week. I'm thinking of adding a little reading nook near the window." "You always talk about it like it's a dream and a plan at the same time," Shane said, voice low. "It is both," Juliet replied. "At first it was just something to keep me from disappearing into other people's expectations. But now it's starting to feel like something I want to build for me. For Willow. For us."
Shane asked.
Juliet's eyes flicked to his. "Is that what this is?" He stepped forward, wiping his hands on a rag before reaching for hers. "I think it's exactly what this is." She didn't speak right away. Instead, she looked down at their joined hands, then back up. "I've always been good at making things work. But I've never been good at letting someone else in." "You don't have to let me all the way in," Shane said. "Just enough to know when to knock." Juliet laughed softly, pressing her forehead to his chest. "I think you already have a key." Later that evening, the four of them sat around Juliet's dining room table. Willow and Wes were knee-deep in a board game, arguing over whether unicorns could fly, while Juliet poured 2 glasses of wine. "I never thought I'd fall in love without planning for it," she said, sliding a glass across to him. But this happened anyway. Shane took a sip. I didn't think love was something I'd get to have a second time. Juliet's smile faded into something softer. Her. Wes's mom. Do you think she'd approve of all this? He nodded. She'd want him to be happy. And she'd want me to stop pretending I don't deserve to be. Juliet set her glass down. You do. You always did. He reached across the table, brushing his thumb along her wrist.
So do you.
By spring, the bookstore opened its doors. Shane stood beside Juliet during the ribbon cutting, Willow bouncing beside her in a dress covered in tiny book prints. Wes had insisted on designing the flyer himself, complete with hand-drawn stars and a crooked dragon. The first customer was a little girl who wandered into the children's corner and curled up with a picture book. Juliet watched her with misty eyes, then turned to Shane. This is what I wanted, she whispered. A space where people feel like they belong. He squeezed her hand. You built that. She shook her head. We did. Summer came quickly, and with it, routines that felt like they'd always existed. Wes and Willow biked to school together, trading snacks and stories. Juliet found herself spending more evenings at Shane's apartment than her own, and eventually, her toothbrush stayed there. Then her books. Then her pillow. One night, as they lay on the couch, Willow asleep against Juliet's shoulder and Wes curled up on the rug, Shane turned to her. I've been thinking. Dangerous, she teased sleepily. I want to marry you. Juliet blinked. That didn't sound like a question. He chuckled. You're right. It wasn't. She lifted her head to look at him. You have a ring? He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Been carrying it for weeks. Just waiting for the right moment. Juliet opened it slowly to find a simple gold band with a single diamond, elegant and understated. I don't need a grand gesture, she whispered. I know, he said. But I needed you to know how serious I am. She closed the box, tears slipping down her cheeks. Then yes. The wedding was held in the bookstore, with aisles of books forming the backdrop. Wes was Shane's best man, Willow carried wildflowers down the aisle, and Juliet wore her grandmother's earrings. Shane wore a navy suit and couldn't stop staring at her. They said their vows beneath a canopy of soft lights and paper cranes folded by the kids. As Shane lifted her veil, Juliet whispered, I never thought I'd find home in a person. You didn't, he whispered back. You found it in us. They kissed, and the crowd of friends, neighbors, and customers cheered. Wes threw confetti. Willow danced in circles. That night, they returned to the garage, the lights still on, and the tools hanging neatly in place. They stood there, hand in hand, looking around the space where it all started. You really think we built something that'll last? Juliet asked. Shane turned to her, his voice sure. We already did. They didn't need a honeymoon on a private island. They had each other, two kids who shared a bedroom wall, a garage with their name on the door, and a bookstore filled with stories waiting to be read. And for the first time in their lives, both of them knew without question they were exactly where they were meant to be. Forever.